Welcome to our interview series on Technology Impact Assessment, otherwise known as TIA. My name is Katina Michael. I'm a visiting scientist at Arizona State University and also a fellow at the Social Cyber Institute. This interview is part of the Australia-India Joint Impact Assessment of Critical Technologies for Peace and Stability project, funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and also our Indian counterparts that has been ongoing now since November 2024. And in this series, we're focusing on technology impact assessment for peace and stability. And someone who has been with us almost the whole year, I'd say the majority, if not all the webinars and roundtables, is Mr. Ujjwal Kumar of CUTS International. Now, CUTS stands for Consumer Unity Trust Society, and it's an international 40 plus years old not-for-profit civil society group. Um, Ujjwal, tell us more about CUTS.
Uh, as you said, it is a 40 plus year old organization. It began as a consumer organization, but slowly graduated into a think tank. Now we call it a think come action tank because we do research and advocacy. Advocacy is part and parcel of what we do. Uh, uh, so it's a think come action tank now, and it has offices in Geneva, in Vietnam, three, four offices in Africa, and four offices in India, and one virtual office in Washington, D.C.
Did you plan on going into the third sector when you were studying? Did you know about not-for-profits and this kind of work that you're engaged in, or it just emerged and happened, it evolved?
Uh, I did my law from Delhi University, and while I was doing law LLB, I got interested in international trade laws and was looking for any avenue or organization where I can work on international trade issues. WTO was just happening then. Uh, uh, in fact, Uruguay round was undergoing then, and WTO had just come up. This was one of the organizations which was unique in India, and somehow I got to work on this issue, on trade issues, where most of the economists were working, not much legal background people were working. So I got and teamed up well with the economists to work on these issues. This was my attraction to this organization.
Was that more about regulation? Were they missing the regulatory side of things, or you had studied some economics in university?
No, for law, I studied physics, in fact. And economics is my weak link, weaker link in that sense. But every WTO agreements and corresponding domestic regulations are all laws. So when you uh, uh, study a particular issue, you need to know the boundaries of legal boundaries. What are the boundaries? Within that, you can discuss economic analysis and but to carve out the boundaries, you need some legal brain.
So your current position title at CUTS is what?
I'm currently an associate director, cuts, and deputy head of a center which is devoted to competition, regulation, and investment.
Okay, and we said CUTS is definitely a not-for-profit. And how does funding come to CUTS? Is it funded by a government body? Is it funded by donations from citizens? How do you function, especially given your international footprint?
Largely funded by international development agencies, largely. Uh, 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 and we also bid for projects from whatever agencies like Ford Foundation. Uh, uh, we also had a project from the AICCTP grant, round two. So that way, these are the major chunks that are.
And your relationship to technology impact assessments. I mean, I imagine you have so many different processes that have organically developed within cuts. Could you describe some of the things that go on at cuts with relation to technology, and if technology impact assessment directly relates to your work or it's a new portfolio?
Uh, it relates, it's a new portfolio, but it's not that indirect to us. That we have been working on the policy and regulatory making aspects of including in the digital economy and the new technologies that are coming up. Uh, and we have worked on regulatory impact assessment and competition impact assessment. So, and we in fact have developed some toolkit also for such impact assessments. Within that bracket, technology impact assessment also, kind of comes into play. Uh, in that sense, it one portion of it is does inform the regulatory and policy making aspect. If we and was say for example the data protection or the social media or the risks and benefit generally. So there are common links which combine technology impact assessment to our work.
And Ujjwal, are you looking constantly from the citizen or civil society consumer perspective? Uh, the issues that come to the fore that you study and you research for clients, uh, are they mainly driven by citizen concerns? Or is it government bodies asking you to investigate matters regarding to citizen challenges with respect to the adoption of new technologies? I'm trying to understand for our listeners too, uh, how is it that issues or projects come into your purview?
Yes, I mean we get kind of when it is a stakeholder consultations, we generally tend to represent consumer interests or citizen interest, you can say. We define consumer as a very close to what citizens. Uh, but in our endeavors, we also take into account what industry says, particularly because we have been right from beginning a very pro-reform, pro-globalization, but with safety net kind of organization. So it's not a skepticism, us versus they, but we include as a holistic. And in that particularly, we generally take care of issues that small and medium businesses face generally. Uh, so it's not that consumer versus industry, but we are part of the whole spectrum, and then we listen to everybody, the multi-stakeholder process kind of thing, which is also part of the TIA, has been in our DNA. In fact, we listen to everybody and then.
Wonderful. And some of the technologies that you have been studying or researching on behalf of these multi-stakeholder consultations, uh, what might they be? Are they critical because they exist in a list identified by the Indian government, or are they critical because the sponsor organization who's requesting your support believes they're critical? How does it work?
Critical technology, I think generally, for instance, in AI CCTP grant process, generally you have defined kind of a list where it is criticality of the technology. But uh, uh, generally speaking, most of the technologies are critical in that sense.
Mm,
The way they are deployed and the way they are used depends on more depend on that where they are deployed and where they are used and how they are applied than the technology per se in that sense. So criticality, uh, uh, we have not looked into the, the the definition or the criticality, but generally what is have been given in that sense, we find it critical.
Could you give me examples of the kinds of studies that you might conduct? Is it related to 6G and civil society, or the adoption of AI and raising consumer awareness and educating consumers? What kinds? I'm trying to understand what kinds of projects or what kinds of endeavors, your mission is about.
Yes, we have done a kind of, we developed an ethical framework for 6G, which is an upcoming emerging technology, which is not yet in the field. We wanted to shape the things that are coming, which is more ethical in that sense. And
Mm,
6G, telecom is the backbone of digital economy. Without that, that is the basic infrastructure. Core of the digital economy is telecom. And so studying that affects the further digitalization of the economy, uh, digital divide and all. But we have worked on, see, in digital economy, our vision is inclusive digital economy. Should be inclusive. Inclusivity is our core of mission, in fact, a statement in that sense. And in that whole arena, we have worked on the data protection aspects, the cyber security aspects. We do also training of citizenry about cyber security every at the grassroots, in fact, villages and all. Uh, and inclusive finance, particularly fintech, the financial technologies. We have worked from competition and regulation angle. Uh, uh, then within that, e-commerce was one of the our areas where we brought from trade angle, from competition angle, from regulatory shaping the regulation angle, both from the perspective of small and medium businesses who are the sellers on the e-commerce platform, and the end consumers like us. So, should be beneficial for all. And particularly our work has been also been, in fact, we have been setting the agenda on competition issues. In fact, we were the first to introduce the debate on whether we should have an ex ante regulation for competition like digital market tax in Europe. When we started debating in India, then the DMA was not yet in force. It was under being talked about in the parliaments and all. So, looking at the things which can happen in 3 4 years, uh, we start to debate and discuss and try to shape the regulatory regulations and policies in these arenas. So these are kind of our work we do.
yes, I imagine affordability, accessibility, the ability uh, not to discriminate against aging populations, um, uh, is all very important, particularly in tech telecommunications. And then we hear, murmurings about metaverse, and you think, but this takes a lot of
Mm.
bandwidth, and not everyone can afford high speed, or particular types of speed, and particular types of interconnectivity, and even gadgets that we have to wear, for example, like meta bands or other things to do with form factors with the metaverse. So, having worked in telecommunications, our concern back in the late 90s was whether the 2G network would be available to people living in the mountains, uh, let alone, some of the conundrums we have today, which is whether satellite telephony can be used in some of the remote areas in Australia. But we had the issue some years ago of having a census being run in Australia all online, and many portions of Australia not having access to the census online because either people lived nomadically in these remote areas, or had no access to satellite telephones. So, this was the kinds of uh, short-sightedness, to roll out a census that was all digital and online without realizing not everyone had access in Australia.
Right.
And you can't really find people who don't have access. But these are some fundamental things. And in your charter, I can see now how important unraveling some of these complex issues is, because there's no real answer. Someone who will have to pay for that last mile for that particular household, that or the one that doesn't afford, or the one that is unhoused, and so forth. Can you give us statistics about uh, consumers or citizens and affordability just of basic internet services in India? Do we have any general markers? You know, should we assume that everybody in India has a smartphone? What are some of the challenges that you see?
Uh, the India is, in fact, has done better than many developing countries as far
Hmm.
as telecom and digital penetration is concerned, internet penetration is concerned. But there are still rural versus urban one, and one of the most prominent is the gender.
Yes,
Uh, the women in India has traditionally have been not been that decision making more of that, and so in gender there are kind of we have miles to go, but as far as rural also I think more than 80 to 80 90% has been covered.
yes.
The gender divide I think still remains. A smartphone in the hand of women is still less, particularly in rural.
Yes. Do you think the Aadhaar system enabled some of this digital economy to take steam in India? Do you think that supported the ability to have a bank account, for example? I remember when Prime Minister Modi came in and was offering some small sum for opening bank accounts. Do you think this was the beginning of this change for India?
Yes, see, we had what we call a jam, uh, uh, Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, and mobile. Uh, Jan Dhan is wealth, in fact, and Jan is uh, 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 public. Uh, so it it was began before Modi ji came into power by the Manmohan Singh government himself. Uh, Aadhaar is the the a unique ID for everybody based on biometric,
Yes.
which began in Manmohan Singh. It was spearheaded by Nandan Nilekani, who is co-founder of one of the big firm. That this is the backbone. Yes.
Mm,
This makes made things easier as far as direct benefit transfers concerned, as far as opening of bank accounts are concerned. So KYC was one of the identity was one of the issues, and so and this also slowly and then when digital technology got deeper and things like that, we have public infrastructure, emphasis on digital public infrastructure in India also led to technology like UPI, Universal Payment Interface, where interoperability is the key. And this, in fact, revolutionized the financial inclusion from every angle. Uh, this was one of the area, but one of the from the small scale credit still remains a issue. Having access to capital still remains an issue.
yeah. Were technology impact assessments done on these, if I can call them magnanimous projects? Because on scale, I compare, for example, Aadhaar to uh, America's biometric systems that were at a state-based level, and we went from 50 million people to a billion people to be registered, and it had never been done before at that scale. Were there any reservations, or at least anybody asking questions about impact and how they would assess the impact of these amazing new technologies being rolled out to every Indian citizen? Can you take us back? What was the initial discussion, if any, or it was let's just do it and then come in with a technology impact assessment later? What is your observation from your expertise?
Yes, my observation was that yes, in the beginning, in fact, then Mr. Modi, Prime Minister Modi was Chief Minister Modi of a state in Gujarat, and he in fact objected to such kind of initiative, calling it intrusion on privacy, or it can,
Yes,
surveillance type of thing. But uh, I think the central government was very clear on the benefits that it can engender to the general mass. Uh, uh, and uh, it was headed by a technocrat. So the architecture of it was very trusted in that hand. The whole project was headed by a technocrat, uh, was given a rank of a minister. He was a cabinet minister, I mean, rank in that sense. Uh, and I understand later on, the one who was the first head of UAIDAI, the authority created, that Mr. R.S. Sharma, that the whole architecture was made foolproof. Uh, uh, and is based on OTP and consent. First, you get consent whether I should access to your, yeah, and then the OTP based access is there. But that is for the that particular transaction or that particular
yes,
and the entity do not have access to the biometric. It all automatic, and it is very walled. I think nobody can access well that well. But of course, one cannot say 100%.
yes,
I mean, in digital world, nobody can. I mean, even FBI may not be safe. We have seen lots of emails being leaked. So, but I think it is very foolproof. And as a challenge, Mr. Sharma had global challenge. He gave he tweeted his Aadhaar ID and challenge anybody to access his bank account and things like that. Nobody could. But he said that some few people, in fact, transferred few 1 rupee or 100 rupees to his account, but nobody was able to crack his account in that sense. So that is trustworthy. But there are skepticism has been there in that sense from this, that if there are political opponent or if there are people who do not
yes,
conform to government, there may be surveillance, their accounts may be closed, bank accounts may be closed. So there are such fears in there. But I think from privacy and cybersecurity angle, I think it's quite trusted system.
yes. Um, this is all fascinating to me. Having watched from afar what has happened in India. And there is this big push towards embracing new technologies, especially those that are conceived and manufactured in India, uh, just for uh, the production and innovation and to keep the money in the country, right? To try and bolster and support local innovation and local companies. So if we go towards now TIA, I mean. Some people have said to me they've never conducted technology impact assessments or technology assessments in India, although they've used synonymous ways to describe TIA with other kinds of assessments or other kinds of processes they've developed in-house. What comes closest to you of things that you have done personally within your organization is in relationship to TIA? If you haven't, have you done any TIAs at Cuts?
That exactly the TIS, but some of the cost benefits that we have done.
Yes.
Uh, 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 Say, for example, again, the Aadhaar and the data protection aspect. So what we did a survey of Pan India survey, how people are perceiving privacy. This was in, I think, 2018 or 2019, when
Yes.
this debate was just happening. And we still do not have a enforceable data protection regime. Uh, and we came to know that not many people care about privacy. And but they do, kind of uh, get benefit out of it, in the sense that they will get bank account being open. Uh, uh, their health records can be, maintained on that. We are very poor. We cannot have the health records of their own. So there were many benefits out of it. So first of all, if my privacy goes and I get benefit out of it, there are more yes sayer in India than no naysayer.
Yes.
So and we could understand the kind of the poverty and the illiteracy that has happened, how much this will benefit them. So this was one in the beginning, and we have been doing a competition impact assessment of any uh, regulation or sectoral aspect. Uh, uh, so those are the things which are in process similar. We also weigh the kind of cost that can it carry and benefits that it can get uh, in that sense, but not exactly. We have not done technology impact assessment in that sense.
Thank you for sharing all those examples. So, could you provide a fundamental definition of TIA for you? How do you conceive technology impact assessment?
I think some sort of structural assessment of impact on uh, of technology, of particularly emerging technology. Uh, uh, Established, you already know things that are happening, but of the emerging and upcoming technology, you have to generally simulate basically. So, structured assessment of this technology on economy, society, environment, uh, 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 or even defense can be a TIA in that sense. And it does involve a 360 view, involved uh, all stakeholder consultation, those who are manufacturing those technologies, those who are using those technologies, those who are in between trading and supplying those technologies, those who are regulating those technology or potential regulators governing those technologies. So asking and having right questions for all of them, and to get the story right.
Would I
And
be
it does
correct?
include a cost benefit analysis in that
Yeah,
sense.
it does, Ujjwal?
I
Yes?
think a TIA include
Yes.
cost benefit.
Yes, I was gonna, that was my question actually. I was about to ask you whether we assume it's embedded in this process, and yes, it is. I can hear that through the multiple comments you've made. And I'm also very encouraged by your definite response that it is a multi-stakeholder consultative process. It's not one-dimensional or homogeneous to a vertical. It's multi-stakeholder. Can you tell me typically and you mentioned some of these before, who might come to the table? Which stakeholders? Could you name them as those that would be invited to attend a meeting, for example, in your work?
Yes, in that particular sector or the technology that we take into account, uh, very typical that we look into the industry. Uh, then you have the regulators, the governance representative. Then you have consumer, civil society, academia, experts, uh, media. Media is also important in that sense. That amplifies things.
Yes.
Uh, what has been the outcome, they amplify things, in fact, and they learn also, in fact, in that sense, so that there are no misreporting or misinformation about things. So it's also good to train media in that sense.
Yes, I was listening to one webinar just this afternoon by Mike Nelson, who was talking
Yeah.
about the role of the media being critical, uh, whether technology could succeed or completely be wiped off the map in a given jurisdiction, uh, purely because of how the media may report on it. So it's either one of fear and horror, this technology will take over and we are all not going to be here tomorrow, or it's one of let's see how this will be utilized in a beneficial way. With this question. How do you understand the role of TIA with respect to peace and stability? What comes to mind regarding peace and stability in the kind of work that you do? And I'm not talking about here wars or conflicts, but perhaps within civil society. How do you see that playing out?
uh, I think it's more of a non-defense, largely if we deal with international, then largely diplomacy. And internally, I think uh, safeguarding critical infrastructures. If our communication is somebody else's hand, then we are doomed. If energy infrastructure is crippled, it will destabilize or have a antithesis to peace, stability. So I think a, a more of a technology impact assessment for uh, safeguarding critical infrastructures, for having uh, what what kind of relationship we have with the international, the geopolitical aspect. So what things that are in non-defense can be, part of the peace and stability bracket of TIA.
With the word trust being in the title of your organization, you said Indians in general, with respect to telecoms perhaps or biometrics, don't have the concern of a privacy issue or a privacy challenge. Uh, did they value trust more than privacy? Did you ask that question? Do you expect that they do from previous research, or these are these issues are secondary to them? I'm just trying to capture sort of the social issues to do with privacy, security, and so forth. Uh, how they're understood, trust, for example, control of their data, and so forth. Is that something that's big on the Indian agenda?
Yes, it has begun on the Indian agenda, but when we ask these questions, I think questions was not there. But today, I think yes, trust is a big issue within countries, and Indian trusting other countries like China. What is the trust level with? So now it is a big thing. The trust thing. Now there are quarters in India which will may not have that much level of trust about things being handled, the data being handled by the government. So then we didn't ask about trust, but yes, I mean trust is at the top. Today. If we have to ask, we certainly ask trust issues.
With India having such a big population and your focus being consumers, civil society, could you tell us a little bit more about the criteria that you might use in TIA or the methodology for collecting data or with identifying critical emerging technologies? What kinds of methods do you use day in, day out for this data collection, and how do you make your judgments on new technologies?
One is, of course, perception survey. We understand that many people will not understand the issues involved in that. So what they perceive, what they are saying is their perception without being, kind of knowing the things they perceive, what they are perceived. So we take it as a perception. We don't take it as a real data of, kind of person. Then we do expert consultations of those perceptions, which is the person who knows the technology, knows the issues, but largely are uh, uh, not connected or not have do not have interests, vested interest in that. What should be the outcome of that process? Uh, those are the core people. Generally, we form some sort of uh, core consultancy group like advisory, project advisory, or who are those kind of experts who will be, kind of looking at that. So these processes are, and then I said about the 360-degree, that process is quite important. We have to get perspectives from others, so to get the story right. And then we analyze those perception in those light, uh, and present it in uh, layman's terms, which the policymakers can understand to shape the regulations and policies around those emerging technologies. So these are our broad framework generally we work, and going on the methodology and the indicators of deepening the indicators on which are variables that will, I think, depend on technology and also its application sub-segment part of it, not, kind of. So that will depend on the part of for example, I'll say a couple of years back we came out with what we call as uh, uh, a scorecard, consumer a scorecard for e-commerce. And we discussed in that sense, we presented how they look at competition, whether competition aspects, the trust aspect, and the how happy they are from the grievance redressal, uh, and so 3, 4, 5 things, and on that in every segment we had various indicators. So we presented a scorecard for 2 consecutive years. We studies not the same, but the same area, same location of around 10,000 consumers for 2 years in India. And we came out with a scorecard. In some, we saw in 1 year some improvement, in some, we saw going down, things like that.
So Delphi models, surveying of people, asking direct questions and getting responses. Very interesting. Uh, we acknowledge perceptions and not so much user behavior.
Mm.
These are two distinct things. We can only have perhaps ideas of attitudes and true attitudes once there has been use. And tell me if Cuts International sees itself as uh, raising the capacity of the people in India, or wherever it does work. You said you do training, at Cuts? Is this for organizations to raise awareness and build capacity among its clients or its subscribers? Who are you training at Cuts, and how does that flow on to the rest of the population?
Uh, See, we have been doing workshops on many things right from our inception. Initial targets were training of trainers in that
Yes.
sense. So, for example, we began as a consumer organization, and then when Consumer Protection Act uh, came in our initial days, we got sensitized with competition issues, how competition in the market or competitive market helps consumers in general. That takes care of many things. You don't have to go to court if market is competitive. Uh, and then was the time when opening of economy, we were the closed economy and things like that. So opening of economy, competition and things. So we did lots of capacity building workshop for consumer organization in the region, South Asian region, whole region. And they got sensitized with the competition issues. And since most of the civil society organization was, uh, uh, you know, uh, did not want to change the status quo. So the kind of foreigners will come, another imperial forces will come, and they will kind of we will not be independent and all. So, but from the competition angle, we did lots of trend, lots of civil society group, and they became kind of in favor of reforms. They became in favor of opening up of the economies. So in that sense, the uh, a chunk of potential opposition became a supporter. So things became easier for India to kind of open up the economy in that sense. Today also we do lots of training, for instance, cyber security. So we have done training to particularly focusing on the women entrepreneurs, SMBs, how you deal with these kind of things. We have a module for that, and it's a continuous process for last 4 or 5 years. We have been doing in the northeast of India, northeast region, which are less accessible, has been less accessible so far. Then in Rajasthan, in rural areas. So our target is largely MSMEs in that sense, to train them. And we also do some of the things. We have a organization which is dedicated to the grassroots. We have a office in rural Rajasthan, which is dedicated to grassroots. We generally go there as a laboratory also to kind of uh, uh, see what is the grassroots dynamics, and how it will fare up. So they work on creating self-help groups of women and working on health, agriculture, creating a farmers collective to kind of, we have a small farmers. So when they become collective, they have some say in the market to sell things like that. So some of the trainings are also going there, and we see that there are few people from the community who are trained, who will keep on training others. So training of trainers approach also we generally adopt in our in some of the projects that we have done.
Thank you. How do you see the purpose of TIA being integrated into your organization? Do you expect, beyond the cost benefit analysis and the competition and the comparative analysis that you mentioned, what purpose would TIA serve? Do you think it is going to be a new process you engage in, or simply an extension of the existing processes you've developed over so many decades?
I think it can be integrated in many aspects in our. So our work, if we give a vertical uh, uh, categorization, then we have trade, we have competition and regulation aspect, and governance and consumer protection aspect. So three verticals that we can see. Uh, and now geopolitics also, we are working on our global affairs, and since geopolitics is guiding most of the trade and the regulation and norm setting. Uh, so TIA can be first integrated into our geopolitical aspect. So, for example, we have been talking about joint TIAs between Australia and India, which is geopolitically possible today. A joint TIA uh, with India and China may not be possible today. So, how the equation change? So that geopolitical aspects can be, look into the TIA aspect, banning of TikTok or banning of Huawei. These are all geopolitical aspects largely. That so that can be one. In trade also, they have been talked about digital trade. Uh, Now, post-Trump, now bilateralism is more. Bilateral trade agreements are again in fashion now. So in that digital trade, one of the issue is trust. Uh, uh, Whether you have a good data protection regime, whether data protection regime or data protection record or ecosystem is good or not, then only data from my country will flow to your country or your data will come to me. So there also some sort of TIAs can fit in. What technologies or technological product, if we have to, I mean, are involved in digital technology, digital trade, that may also have some aspect of TIA in that sense. And then the center where I am working at the moment is largely shaping the policy and regulations. That's it. So TIA has immense role in shaping the regulations and politics. Generally, what are the risks, what are the vulnerabilities, and whether the policies are taking care of such vulnerability or not. These are the uh, these are the areas where I think TIS can fit in.
It's fascinating. One of the comments by Jürgen Altman in his interview was TIA would be most effective if it was used jointly between enemies or those that were not in alliance or those where there was conflict. And of course, it sounds like a wonderful solution to resolving problems, and that uh, contact has to happen somewhere, and perhaps the grassroots is where it can flourish. Because everyday people going about their business, really the only thing they care about is their family is safe, there is a roof over their head, and they have clothes to wear to go to work, and they're earning an income. Uh, and then there is food on the kitchen table, to cook. When we look at really what pulls the strings of societal members, I remember somebody saying to me, and in fact, it was a media consultant saying to me at the University of Wollongong 20 something years ago, Katina, people love to ponder on the future, but it's not imminent. The future is some time away. They're more concerned with the cost of milk and the cost of bread at the loaf
Right,
of bread
right.
at the shop. And so if there is a front page, headline that says cost of bread to go up by 10%, this will cause mayhem. But if it's something saying, cyborg created a new implant in brain. Oh, yes, another one of those. Thank you very much. But it's down the track. I'm not going to be asked to go and have an implant tomorrow at the office. But th this is interesting when we talk about bilateral and multilateral, and perhaps the whole idea of technology impact assessment, because it somehow seems TIA is not imminent, that it's about what future predicament we might find ourselves in with respect to our technology, some of the unintended consequences or some of the positive benefits that might ensue by deployment. And it's not imminent, but if we talk about uh, what is the effectiveness potentially, or what do you presume the effectiveness of a TIA? Say if you were asked in Cuts International to do a TIA, what do you believe some of the positive responses or benefits would be of conducting something like this for a government agency or another stakeholder who's sponsoring a project? What could be the effectiveness or the flow-on effects of TIA? How might it be used by the the recipients?
One thing would be what we call as evidence-based policy making. So this will help in creating credible evidence.
Mm,
One thing, TIA, and either the general public or the polity or the industry, everybody will benefit from a 360 view, 360-degree view. You know, what others think, what others say, what
yes,
they are kind of whether they have what are their risks and how they are kind of doing that. So after doing all this, then uh, there is more awareness about the right kind of a story that people need to build, and what uh, Michael Nelson was today speaking that uh, it has to be kind of in form of a storytelling. So and I also liked about he emphasizing in today's world, if you have to convince and have a larger effect, or communicate to larger people, then scenario building approach is much kind of uh, useful, and with a good storytelling. So you will be able to say that if this happens and this is likely, this happens and this is likely. So I think these are the things. More clarity, more evidence, what people say, and more articulate becomes, and then it becomes a better policies, more aware industry about what their users are thinking about it, how they will. So I think everybody will be benefited from this.
I know I've kept you almost an hour so far, Ujjwal. I have one more last question for you, and perhaps then I'll ask you a freelance comment request. But last question from me is, how does a TIA evolve through a technology's life cycle? So a new technology enters the stage, enters the arena, we begin to be able to name it. Uh, at what point in the technological conception to diffusion or proliferation should we be conducting TIAs? Is that the way to look at it, or there is another way?
Let me take example of 6G, which I've studied recently. Uh, First thing was to have a global understanding on is the vision, how will the 6G look like, what will be this ingredient. This is also a kind of, in my opinion, uh, shaping and technology of tomorrow by everybody contributing towards the big governments and and particularly telecom industry and the standard body communicating towards it. So the vision is now concrete.
Hmm.
Countries that India contributed to that. Uh, After that, from now on, the standards, what technologies can go into which will fit into the vision, and which will. So the standard making process under the umbrella of ITU, National Telecom Union, I think that process takes care of lots of risks and vulnerabilities of a technology involved in that sense. So standard making is a the technology has not yet come to unless the standards are made, the technology will be
Mm.
deployed later on. So the, the the assessment part is ongoing. The standard making, I think, is the market based, you can say, technology impact assessment. A Nokia will try to contest Huawei. Huawei will try to contest Ericsson. Ericsson will try to contest other newcomers if they are, and they will do with evidence, and they will do with all the things to satisfy the committee where this is being adopted. So now, once the technology is deployed, then say, I mean, in that it is one of the visions of it is a secured 6G. 6G would be a secured network. I mean, it would be much more secure than the 5G. So, what are the technologies that has gone secured, and whether it is a secured after the standard making body has done that? Then I think if in today's geopolitical world, if most of the Chinese technologies are adopted, which looks like will be 6G, then countries will need to do their impact assessment.
Yes.
And that will be, as one of your questions says, that will be a good opportunity for joint impact assessment
Yes.
between in India and Australia. Uh, and after the technology in deploy, there are many other aspects. What you want to study, many things may not be there in the standard making process. For instance, inclusivity might not be there. Sustainability, though in the vision of 6G, sustainability has been included. So let's see what are the technologies they are going to adopt for the sustainability of 6G. But from environmental angle, from societal angle, uh, uh, and particularly from competition angle. Michael Nelson was today emphasizing competition quite a lot. I like that, in fact, which we did
Yes.
also in our ethical framework of 6G introduced competition, which will not be taken care of by the standard forums and all. So a competitive market is, kind of whether it will lead to only concentrated market or whether it will be competitive market uh, that will need a technology impact assessment. Would be India also aspired to be, kind of looking at the China, that we can also be a manufacturing hub. So 6G, we are also aspiring as a manufacturing network equipment. So whether our network equipment trusted to Australia or not. So that way, if Australia says yes, your network equipment is trusted, it is good, it is secured, things like that. Once that happens, then the marketability in the Indo-Pacific region will increase, because we know that Australia will do such assessment much more vigorous than many countries which may not have that resources to do. So if Australia has said yes, country like Indonesia can buy our equipment, country like Philippines can buy our equipment. So that way, the life cycle will go on in like in that sense, from vision to deployment and post deployment. If anything arises, then one may, kind of use us. So this is how I view the life cycle of technology, the TIA. Can.
It's a very good look at it, and outlook that is, particularly when we get new forms of relationships being bolstered. I mean, you mentioned the Indonesian market, another fast growing, I think it's the fourth fastest mobile network growth in the world due on subscribers, and of course, India being one of those as well. If not leading, I can't remember the actual chart I was looking at
Mhm.
several years ago, but Indonesia certainly is the fourth fastest growing. based on number of people. And so these are great new relationships being formed by what I would call new entrants into particular technological markets. And it can only be healthy to have diversity and not complete homogeneity, even when we are thinking about cybersecurity attacks. You know, the fastest way to penetrate a system is if all the mobile handsets are exactly the same and they're all on the same uh, generation network and they are all with the same provider and it's a monopoly or oligopoly, then it becomes sitting duck for the subscriber through large-scale attacks that are effective, particularly when we start to factor in AI as being one of those big threats coming through. Um, Tell us if, I mean, there are so many questions, Ujjwal. We could take hours, but cognizant of your time and our listeners who hopefully will be listening to the whole of this interview, do you have anything else to share or any perspectives that are unique, do you think, to your kind of role and your organization with respect to technology impact assessment? Something we should take on board that we haven't as a group, where you might like to see the development go further after November this year? Any thoughts that we haven't covered perhaps already today?
I think I've already covered how we link TIA to our work so far. And one form of TIA where we would like to involve, I mean, in particularly as a stakeholder, consumer as stakeholder, representative of consumers, that's uh, would be the sandboxing approach. Sandbox. Uh, Generally, regulators are involved. Sandbox, looking at what is happening, what are the. I think the observers of the sandbox, if we expand, experts and consumers, the users, representatives should also look what is happening, how they are making, whether they are taking along all the risks, whether they are, because I think today introducing regulation or policy, as today again Michael has said, policy and regulation have been far behind anyway as far as technology developments are concerned. So sandboxing is, I think, the right approach if we do not want to impair innovation, and also sandboxing is a right approach for most of the cyber technologies at least, and emerging technologies. Because in sandboxing, you don't look the technology whole. I agree with uh, Michael today that splinters and looking things as a whole. To what AI, for example, what application of AI is one application of AI is one sandbox.
Yeah,
If it is in health sector, say for example, using AI in surgery and health sector, then you should have experts from health, public health people, experts from uh, other people, uh, apart from the regulator itself. Uh, that way, this will increase trust. Because if tomorrow, if I don't have trust on regulator or the government, I still have a larger bag, so experts and academia or the consumer representatives saying no, this was the right process. What they are doing is right. Uh, 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 then the usage and adoption of technology will be much better and more trusted. So in that sense, I think sandboxing, this is we would certainly like to be presented.
that's a great last comment, may I add. Nobody has talked about that so far in the interviews, and we've done half a dozen already this last week. Uh, I'd like to thank you for that contribution because regulatory sandboxes where different stakeholders can interact without fear of reprisal because it really hasn't
mm,
gone live yet. And we've done
mm,
this with software development in years gone
mm,
by, for decades and decades. There's a development server, production server that you go live with, and there you have it. It's live finally. But if we do have this sandbox environment, and I first heard the term of a regulatory sandbox when I first went over to the US at ASU in around 2016. You might have thought it was much earlier, but that's the
mm.
earliest conception I recall in my academic life of hearing this discussion on sandboxes. But I definitely think there's uh, huge things to say for the benefits that could be experienced by everybody. And again, this beautiful uh, collaborative spirit you've actually started to talk to us about from the beginning of this interview, where it's not an us versus them mentality. It's how are we going to collaborate to make this happen, and how can we together overcome some of the stumbling blocks or some of the potential unintended consequences that may arise. But as you say, on the practical level, it's more about empowering people with new technologies so they can uh, uh, do things with them, whether that's join the digital economy and be considered a person who can actually buy and sell, versus someone who might be, a full-blown startup with many ideas to create a business from goods developed within India and to sell them internationally within a complex environment internationally. So with that, Ujjwal, Kumar, thank you so much for this insights you've provided us, especially because we didn't have a civil society organization that we interviewed. You're the first one that I know of that I've come across this week, and that helps us look at it look at the issue of TIA from different perspective. Thank you also for all the contributions you've made throughout every webinar you've been present at and the roundtables. This would not have worked as well as it has without people like yourself participating
Yeah.
and giving of their time. Thank you for your expertise and your brain power, and we'd love to see you in the eighth and final webinar to come soon. I think it's in late July,
Yes.
but I appreciate everything you've given us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And I also thank you and thank you for looping me in because this has given me another perspective to look at things. TIA. So thank you. And whatever I've learned from TIA has begun from this. And I've also seen the first report that has come out. Yet to read very deeply, but I think I've cursorily gone once. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ujjwal. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Thank you. Bye bye now.
Bye. Bye.